What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you the best method to fully AFK Crystal Shapeshifters in the player-owned dungeon. This method gets upwards of 750 kills per hour on the Penance aura, or maybe even up to 800 kills per hour if you're using a DPS aura. So hopefully you guys use this method to get your Ultimate Slayer log completed, and maybe get some attuned crystal armor if you really want that. So hopefully you guys like this method and get some achievements done. So before we start this method out, there is a very important thing to do, and that is come over here to Angoff in Tartadad and toggle the shapeshifter aggressiveness to make sure they are aggressive to you. If they're not toggled to be aggressive, you'll have to use something like an Agro pod or something like that, which is kind of a waste. So make sure you're toggling the aggressiveness and making them aggressive to you. So when you enter the player-owned dungeon, they will constantly be aggressive to you the entire time, pretty much no matter what. They never lose their aggressiveness. And while we're here, I'm just going to show where I stood to be getting my souls here. So this is kind of where I stood to be getting my souls. I also would highly suggest using something like a Death Skulls AoE bar instead of the Scythe bar, just so you can start attacking these guys while standing kind of in the center, like right over here. If I don't get pulled all over the place from Scythe. But yeah, you just stand like in the center here. Let me actually like put on this bar. But yeah, you stand like right over here, and then you might have to click manually to attack these guys over here. But for the most part, it should be pretty easy to AFK these guys out, especially once you get the final wave done. Obviously, I kind of trolled right there, but that is where I collected my souls. The souls are fairly common. I think it's about 1 in 80 or something like that. Maybe it's 1 in 60, but they're fairly common at 120 Slayer or on task. And even if you're not 120 Slayer, it would be about 1 in 120 kills, which is definitely fairly reasonable to be getting all 5 of your souls. So yeah, make sure you're toggling the aggressiveness out. That is the most important part. Moving on to the preset for this method, the preset is fairly straightforward. You can see, starting off with the relics, we just have the Fury of the Small relic. This is really the only relic that you actually need. If you find yourself struggling with damage, you can put on Death Ward as well, but I found you don't need that. Conservation of Energy is also somewhat helpful as well if you can get access to that. And that's only if you are using the Death Skulls in your action bar. If you're not using Conservation of Energy, you can definitely just take Death Skulls off your bar. It probably won't really ever cast anyway if you don't have that, but if you do have Conservation of Energy, definitely keep in mind that Death Skulls can cast and the extra AoE damage is pretty nice. For the Familiar, I just use a Blood Reaver to spam out a little bit of extra poison damage. This one is really nice because it attacks with like typeless damage, and it just spams out poison damage, so no matter what style the Crystal Shapeshifter is in currently, it'll be taking full damage from your Familiar. For the gear is pretty straightforward, but there are a few important items to note. The first one is going to be the Ring of Death. In any situation where you're using the Scythe ability, I find the Ring of Death to be incredibly strong because you want to be getting that extra adrenaline from the Ring of Death effect, and that will help you spam out more scythes, potentially get you to Death Skulls, and it can just help improve your kills per hour by quite a bit. So definitely be using that if you have it. For the gloves, the Cinderbanes are obviously the best here. These things can be poisoned, so Cinderbanes will help you spam out even more poison damage. For the armor, I would highly suggest using the first Necromancer robes. You shouldn't need these by any means. You can also use, Death Warden or Death Dealer probably even. But if you have access to the 4 pieces of the first Necromancer set, I would highly suggest using it just so you're saving yourself a bunch of ectoplasm per hour. It's really good to be using that if you can get it. For the weapons, tier 90s will be fine here. Tier 95s are by no means necessary. And for the amulet, I would highly suggest using a Amulet of Souls. This gives you a bunch of extra healing capability, which pretty much seems necessary to keep yourself alive. You obviously could be using an EOF, but that just costs so much to use, it's not really worth it. For the cape, you could really use any cape you want. We're not really using Death Skulls, so the cape effect is pretty much moot. And for the God Book, I like to use the Book of Wen for the extra AoE damage and poison spam. And then obviously I like to use penance auras for AFKing just so we're not wasting powder of penance because those are pretty expensive to use. So I would highly suggest just using the penance aura. If you're not going to be using the penance aura, I think the Majorat aura is probably the best. I tried the equilibrium aura and it didn't really seem to be that much better. I think it gave me like 10 more kills per hour. So it's not really that great, but I think if you're using Majorat, it would probably be pretty strong. And then the inventory is extremely basic. We just have a spring cleaner. We have the Excalibur and Shard just in case. The teleport book, some incense sticks. What I have here is Lantidime and Quirm to be getting the most out of our overloads and boosting our poison damage. And then we just have, our overloads with potion reservoirs and some weapon poisons. And yeah, that's pretty much it in the inventory. Very, very basic inventory. So moving on to the perks, you can see we are now in game. The perks that I was using are going to be Crackling, Relentless, and then Biting 4. One thing to note about this is the Relentless perk seems to be very, very good for this method if you're going to be using Death Skulls in your bar. So if you are going to be doing that, definitely be trying to get Crackling Relentless because a Relentless proc can help you get a free Death Skull cast, which can improve your kills per hour by quite a bit. And then kind of on the same note, we are using Impatient 4 as well, kind of for that same reason. Impatient 4 should help you get more Scythe casts, and it can occasionally get you up to that Death Skulls, like I was saying. So I would highly suggest getting those two perks specifically. And I also find Absorbative 4 is really good for AFKing here. Occasionally, your HP does dip if you're not using Darkness. Usually it won't get you killed, but Absorbative 4 definitely helps you stay alive. And then on the weapons, we just have our standard best in slot PVMing perks. You could probably even replace these with something like a Ruthless and Eruptive, but I would highly suggest just using the best in slot perks here. But yeah, those are the perks that we're using. Very, very straightforward perks. And again, like I said, definitely try to be getting your adrenaline perks because they do help you out quite a bit here. So once you collect all 5 of your souls, just put them in the small room, and starting this up is fairly straightforward. All you do is turn on your prayers, overload, weapon poison, summon your familiar if you want to, turn on your book, your aura, and all you do before you enter in is use the anticipation ability, and then you enter the doorway here, and then you walk over here right behind the shadow on the floor, and you pretty much just AoE them down from here. The action bar you can see on screen here is using Scythe AoE. I find that the Scythe AoE bar is significantly faster than something like a Death Skull AoE bar, so make sure you're using the Scythe ability here. You can see we do also have the Death Skulls ability in here. If you have, some really good perks, a Ring of Death and stuff like that, to be collecting a bunch of adrenaline, you can get a few additional Death Skulls. And we just had the slowest spawn rotation of all time right there. It's crazy. But yeah, you can occasionally get a few Death Skulls to cast, but for the most part, you don't really cast it all that often. And most of your AoE damage is pretty much just the Scythe ability. I find that this bar gets you upwards of about 750 kills per hour on Penance, or about 800 if you're using something like the Powder of Penance and like a Majorat aura or something like that. But I would highly suggest just using the Penance aura. I find it to be much better. So if you're killing 750 shapeshifters per hour, that comes out to about 20 mil an hour in profit according to the wiki. I'm not entirely sure how accurate that truly is though, because if you see on screen here, 10 mil of that is in crystal gloves, which I'm not entirely sure if those actually sell for as much as they do, but 20 mil an hour or even 10 mil an hour is fairly decent for killing these guys. And if you see here on screen, you can see it gives you about 2 million combat XP per hour as well, which is an incredibly good training method for necromancy. So I would highly suggest killing these if you want to be training necromancy. It definitely seems like one of the best options for training right now. And it's pretty decent because it does give a fair amount of GP as well. As far as your gear and buffs are concerned, you shouldn't need to be using Darkness if you have the best in slot gear. But if you do have slightly lower end gear, you might want to be using Darkness if you notice yourself taking a little bit of extra damage. So definitely keep that in mind depending on your gear. But yeah, as far as a method is concerned, this is definitely one of the best things to put in your player-owned dungeon, in my opinion. So if you're training necromancy, want to make a little bit of extra money, definitely be going out and getting some Crystal Shapeshifters, because this is honestly one of the best things to be putting in your player-owned dungeon for training and farming money. So yeah, this is a great method for most people. And also on top of that, it does give you the Ancient Elven Wedding Ring, which is an item you need for the Ultimate Slayer title and an achievement. So if you're hunting for that, this is definitely the best method to be doing that as well. The only other reason you would be killing these things is if you're some type of like completionist type person and you want to be getting the attuned crystal armor. This is also a great way to be getting shards. You'll probably be getting about 1,000, maybe even 1,250 shards per hour, which is pretty significant. And you should be able to get your crystal armor fairly quickly. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this video helps you guys train necromancy or get your ultimate slayer title. And if this video did help you out and you made it this far in the video, definitely drop a like on it. It does help promote the channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.